Named by some as the Japanese Napoleon, Toyotomi Hideyoshi laid the foundations for one of the most successful periods in Japanese history. But how did this born peasant become the Kanpaku of Japan? All that and more in today's episode of History Behind Warlords. Hey everyone, Aaron here from Firefly Studios with a heavy heart welcoming you to our final episode of History Behind Warlords. For those of you first timers, this is a series I do here at Firefly Studios where I take you through the events leading up to our historical campaigns and our upcoming RTS Stronghold Warlords. But now in our final episode we come to Toyotomi Hideyoshi, one of the greatest underdog stories in the whole of Japanese history, maybe the history of the world. Now, to start off with an interesting note, the Sengoku Jidai is also known as the Japanese Warring States period, the name being directly inspired by the Chinese Warring States period, which we already covered in a previous episode. Go check that out if you have not already. This was around 100 years of conflict, political cunning, and of course the usual backstabbing, a landscape of chaos born from the Onin Civil War, where the Japanese feudal system essentially collapsed. Now, technically at the time the emperor was still in power, but this is pretty much how it went down. Yes, Emperor, I will indeed continue to work with our fellow provinces, the fellow daimyos, to keep Japan stable and unified. Goodbye. Hello, fellow daimyo. Stab, 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 stab. Japan at the time was a free-for-all, with every lord and lady with a piece of land with a couple of plots up their sleeve. But it was one relentless individual who would rise above them all, Oda Nobunaga. But wait, Aaron, I thought this episode was about Toyotomi Hideyoshi. Who's this Oda Nobunaga guy? Well, Oda Nobunaga was actually Toyotomi Hideyoshi's mentor and inspiration. And he's also like one of the most famous Japanese people ever, so you kind of have to cover him. He was a daimyo of the 16th century who rose to prominence in the Owari province after his father's death in 1551. To try and sum him up in a paragraph, he was a revolutionary military strategist who experimented with the most cutting-edge technology within warfare. A firm believer in economy and industry, initially taking control of the Owari province plains of agriculture to feed his armies. He clearly respected land and resource as well as military might. Add to the mix his cunning trading skills as he worked closely with the merchant classes of Nagoya. This dude knew that there was much more to winning battles and sieges than manpower and strategy, and he had tons of both anyway, so who cares? And most importantly, he was a man obsessed with unifying Japan from this chaotic Sengoku Jidai period, and overcoming numerous extreme and dangerous obstacles, including the succession dispute of his own clan and the countless battles he would win. This would prove him worthy of the loyalty of many during the Sengoku Jidai period, including a peasant boy who would soon be known as Toyotomi Hideyoshi. Now, Toyotomi Hideyoshi is one of my personal favorite historical figures. Ignoring his later persecutions of Christians, implementation of a strict class system, and monopolizing of political and economic powers, he was an inspiration. Let me explain. Born to a poor peasant family and simply originally known as just Hiyoshimaru, I believe Toyotomi Hideyoshi in his upbringing saw two sides of what he could become, as his father was a part-time farmer and a part-time foot soldier. He could either live a life of tilling fields or risking life and limb for a rise in the ranks under Nobunaga's policies, which rewarded innovation and cunning regardless of bloodline or kinship. He began his military career by leaving home after his father's death, becoming a retainer of the Imagawa clan in 1551. After a short stint in the Imagawa clan, Toyotomi Hideyoshi returned home to the Oda provinces to serve under our man Oda Nobunaga. Now, there are very few sources claiming any details about Toyotomi Hideyoshi's first years under the service of Oda Nobunaga, and at this time he would have been serving just under the clan in general. Oda Nobunaga probably didn't even know he existed at the time.
You've got something to say?
But there are sources which claim that he was a young, bright, tactful, and intelligent soldier in the relatively small forces of the Oda clan at the time, so he was probably getting noticed by some higher-ups. There are certain tales of Hideyoshi being Nobunaga's sandal bearer in the Battle of Okihazama, where notably Nobunaga defeated the forces of the invading Imagawai clan whilst being vastly outnumbered. Now these are sadly probably embellishments to add to the excitement and romance with a capital R of Oda Nobunaga's and Toyotomi Hideyoshi's kinship. There's also some sources claiming that Oda Nobunaga called Toyotomi Hideyoshi a bald rat constantly, which is also probably false, but I found it funny. But to summarize, what you need to know right now is Toyotomi Hideyoshi is a young, ambitious man wanting to escape his farmer fate, and Oda Nobunaga has this great ruthless vision of unifying Japan. And to do so, he will promote you if you are intelligent and tactful and you show great resource on the battlefield. He will not show bias based on bloodline or kinship. And this was the perfect storm for Toyotomi Hideyoshi to rise up the ranks and become one of the great unifiers of Japan. And with Toyotomi Hideyoshi wanting to prove his worth under the Oda clan, we come to the siege of Inabayama Castle, which a certain historical campaign in Stronghold Warlords will be kicking off with. No spoilers. You can put two and two together, but no spoilers. You will be helping Toyotomi Hideyoshi continue Oda Nobunaga's legacy as he tries to unify Japan, going through some of the most famous historical battles and sieges conducted at the time. And all of that will be available in its full RTS glory when Stronghold Warlords releases next year in 2020. And with that, we bring the series to a close. Now that we've covered all 4 of our historical campaigns with these little sort of video prologues, if you will. Again, if you want to see our episodes on Vietnam, on China, on Mongolia, the episodes are already released on our YouTube channel. Those will be in the description box below. And finally, to finish, you know what's coming if you watch all our Warlords content. If you have not wishlisted the game on Steam, you can do that right now. It helps us out a ton as an indie developer, and you'll be the first to know when we announce the release date. So there's nothing to lose for you or us. And with that, I say farewell, and I'll see you next time in our next Firefly Studios video.